Hi everybody! Today I'm going to show you how I recently made this cube and pad for a custom order. First I start by cutting 6 pieces of 1/2 inch thick foam in 10 by 10 inch squares. I already have a pattern that I use and I'll trace the amount that I need and then cut them all out. These will become the insides of the cube and help it maintain its shape better than batting. Next I measure and cut the pattern and solid fleece pieces. I use a 12.5 inch square OmniGrid ruler for the potty pad pieces and a 13-inch square for the cube pieces to ensure there's enough excess fabric to cover the foam for base stitching and sewing the sides together. I'll need a total of 14 pieces for this project. After all the fleece is cut, I then cut out the 2 absorbent layers for the potty pad. Now we start the assembly, or pre-assembly if you will. First, I put the potty pad together, wrong side of the pattern to the absorbent layer, and top with the right side of the solid pattern, and finish with the other absorbent layer and clip together. Next, I put right sides together of a solid and a pattern fleece for the 2 sides of the cube that will eventually have the opening in it. Top that with the foam piece and clip together. For the other 4 sides, I layer a solid square, a foam piece, and then a pattern piece and pin them together. After I've prepped all the squares, I trace the circle pattern onto the pieces that'll eventually become the entrances for the cube. My circle is about 4 3/4 inches in diameter, but you can use what you like, as long as it's big enough for your pet to get through. Now it's time for sewing. Usually I start with the potty pad, but there's no right or wrong way to begin. After I sew the pad, I hand stitch it closed and then I top stitch it in 2 places to ensure the padding doesn't shift when washed. The first stitching starts about 1.5 inches from the edge of the seam, and the second one is about 1/2 inch away from the first one. Again, this is a personal preference, you do you. Here I'm sewing the circles of the sides that will become the openings. After the circles are sewn, it's time to cut the middle out as close to the stitching as possible, but do not cut your stitches. Then I pull the solid piece through the hole, out the other side, and pin it onto the pattern fleece. Now all the sections are ready for basting. The reason I do this is to keep all the materials in place when I top stitch later to prevent everything from shifting. It is a good practice to follow since fleece is pretty slippery and can have a mind of its own sometimes. If you choose not to do this step, be prepared for any consequences such as having to rip out seams and possibly start over. Once all the pieces are basted, it's time to top stitch them before assembly. The first one of these I ever made, I skipped this step because I thought, why? Well, after one wash, I found out why. The foam came away from the corners and bent in crazy ways, and I had to get creative and maneuver it back into place to resemble a cube again. Needless to say, I learned my lesson the hard way, but now we know. I use a ruler to be sure all top stitching is the same distance from the edge of the foam and has a nice look when it's finished. Finally, it's assembly time. You may have thought we'd never get here, but this is where all the magic happens, and you can watch your item come to life. I start by sewing one of the openings to the top of the cube. This particular order opted out of the ribbons on the top, so it's just plain. Next, I sew another section with an opening onto another side of the top section. Once those are sewn and trimmed, I connect the openings to each other. Keep in mind when sewing, you want to have your presser foot as close to the foam edge as possible without sewing the foam itself. As you keep putting new sections on and sewing them together, the project does get a bit cumbersome to manipulate. This part seems to take the longest, but to be fair, you are sewing 12 seams to put it all together. I changed views here so you could get a better look at the project from my point of view. Now, a little over 2 hours of footage down to a 7-minute video that only took 4 to 5 hours to edit. Yay me! here's the finished product. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for watching.